Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're talking about the shakeup at Xbox, and we're not going to go over all of the little details and read the statements and stuff. I assume most of you have already done that. But what I want to talk about is what it reveals at Xbox, and that it's not unique to Xbox either. Because while Phil is retiring, Sarah Bond resigned, and we have the head of AI core at Microsoft, Asha Sharma, becoming the new Microsoft Gaming CEO of Microsoft Gaming, and Matt Booty is going to take over like director of content. It's a very linear structure. Everything is still going to report directly to the CEO of Microsoft, which is Satya Nadella. Now, the thing that is surprising is that we knew that Phil eventually was going to retire, yes, but retire before the 25-year anniversary and retire before the next gen Xbox. We weren't expecting it right now. Also, Sarah Bond not taking over, that's a shocker. That's surprising because she's been with Xbox for quite some time from T-Mobile. She really helped form a lot of stuff with the subscription service and Game Pass and all of that kind of stuff and cloud gaming. She's really been a big push on that, and the backwards compatibility too, as that is Play Anywhere is the new backwards compatibility. I'll do that in another video. The thing though that is surprising is that we're having someone that really doesn't know much about gaming or the games industry having to learn all about this. It is a fresh pair of eyes, but Asha really has to prove a ton of stuff. But this is not new to Xbox. So if we remember, we also had Doug Bowser, the head of USA Nintendo. He unexpectedly just retired. Like, yep, I'm done. And this was after pretty much the coming launch and all of the bad publicity that was coming out the months after launch about some of his statements and also about what the Switch 2 was and the features and policies too that Nintendo had. And yeah, it wasn't a great look, and it still isn't. And they've also undersold on their consoles with what they were expecting by a pretty big margin. We also had Sony do this exactly the same thing. Not only did they replace Jim Ryan, which was the head of PlayStation and the whole live service push, which they're still kind of doing that, they're also replaced a ton of people. They replaced the head of PlayStation. They also replaced, of course, Jim Ryan, though Holst was not given the reins. It was Nishino. And Nishino and Holst used to be in parallel, but now they're in series. Nishino is above Holst, and that's permanent. That didn't take very long to work out. Also, Sony replaced the leadership of music, and then they also replaced the leadership, the head of movies. And this was all roughly around the same time. But again, no one really talked about the other two because it wasn't about gaming. But yeah, Sony basically took 4 positions of leadership and removed them, saying, you're not doing a good enough job. We're not getting enough revenue. There's still too much stagnation. We don't have good enough profit margin, which they don't. Because 10% is good for them. That's and 10% profit margin is not good for a company, especially a tech one. But yeah, that's been the shakeup. So each console company has had a problem. And my real point is that console is dying. There's not enough money to keep it all going. The hundreds of millions now just to spend on games is too big of a budget. They need to slim that down. But then too, we have also a whole bunch of people that retired or died or whatever or moved on with COVID, and we've had new people come in, and then we've also had roughly 33% to 35% of the entire gaming industry get fired in the last 5 years, which is insane. That is a huge culling of people. And then some new people have also stepped in for cheaper labor or been outsourced to other countries or whatever. And yeah, we've also lost a lot of experience in making these games and optimizing them for the hardware and all of this stuff. And then too, there's the thing of upscalers, and that's coming. And I did that in a previous video. I'll link that at the end about the upscalers. But here's what I really want to show is that we had to launch a PlayStation and Xbox, and it just stagnated. The revenue stagnated in the United States. And I use this United States as a bellwether because they're the biggest puller for each console company and also for Steam. They pull, I think Steam. I might be wrong about that. But they pull a ton of money. They are the lifeblood. And if the United States has a problem, the rest of the gaming industry has a problem. And the stagnation that we've had in the 20s, we really didn't expect. So from 2020 on, even now going into 2026, it's been stagnating pretty badly. 2025 didn't see a ton. We had a really bad holiday year for 2025 for PlayStation. Well, really for Xbox, but it was also not a great year for PlayStation or for Nintendo. They sold less than what they were expecting, which is why we're going to get into the stocks here in a little bit. But, PlayStation, this is an older picture, I know, but this is comparing the previous PlayStation gens. And we know, too, they roughly have about 92 million consoles sold for PlayStation 5, and that still does not beat the PlayStation 1 during the entire life cycle. Now, if PlayStation is going to be continuing to do the PlayStation 5 through 28 or through 29 until the PlayStation 6 comes out, there's still a few more years left. But that means they still need to sell another 10 million consoles by then. Or another 20 million consoles just to match the PlayStation 4. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, especially for the PlayStation 4 in that time. Because, yeah, people are broke. Money is tight for all of us, myself included. I got to watch my nickels and dimes now that pennies are gone. But it's getting crazy. And then, too, things, even though the earnings have been relatively good, that was down 12%. And this is PlayStation, by the way. That was down 2%. That was a little, fairly good. That was fairly good. But again, the stock has been going down, and it's just stagnating again. And getting below this white line is bad. That's a 200-day moving average of the price. And yeah, people, the investors and the insiders, they're not believing that things are going well ultimately for PlayStation. They've also changed what they're focused on for metrics like monthly active users instead of console sales because they can't stay focused on exclusivity. Same with Xbox. And then when we take a look at Nintendo, well, they were expecting to sell 25 million units by the end of March 2026. That's literally in a month, guys, 5 weeks. And they're not going to hit that number. Right now, they've sold probably around 18 million units to be safe, maybe 19 million. But this number, the 17.6, includes what the holiday was. And yeah, they didn't sell as much as they were thinking. So they're kind of ramping down production a little bit. Even just checking the store, the Xboxes, the PlayStations, the Nintendo Switch 1s and 2s, they're all still available. There is not a single problem finding any any console out there. Though what is funny is that I do find that all of the digital Series X's are gone. They're always paid for. They're always empty on that shelf, which is weird. But when we take a look at Nintendo stock, it looks exactly the same thing. Even though revenues were pretty good. That was a little bit of a mess, but it's like this was really good and we started heading down for 3 months now. And something just feels sick with the entire console industry. And yes, I am saying console industry. The thing, too, that's crazy is we just got a report. I think it was out of it was Bloomberg or IGN. I forget. Excuse me. But it's showing that the funding for video games, generally speaking, in the gaming industry is down 85%. So that means that Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, and whoever else, they're all just going to focus on what makes money or what has made money in the past. And that's why we're not seeing innovation. We're not really seeing a lot of new projects. There's a few, but again, they're more independents. They're running a better business model. But the console model, I really believe, is sick because of the stagnation of sales, the not meeting expectations for all three companies, and the leadership shakeups that we've had at all three console companies. And yeah, what is console going to do? And now we have the big game coming right at the end of 2026, which is GTA 6. And they're expecting roughly like 15 million units in pre-orders, which will be over $1 billion in sales. And I don't even think they're going to hit that. I still think people are excited, yes. And yes, I do think GTA 6 is going to be $70. And then they'll sell you the multiplayer for $30 or $40. And that's how we get our $100 game. I think that's how it'll work. But things are not going good. And again, this is not just a Xbox problem. It's bigger than that. And no, this is not console warring. I'm just wanting to share the information as it is. And if that's interesting to you, go ahead and like and sub, because this is the kind of stuff that I like to do. But yeah, what do you guys think? I really think console can't compete in the current market that we have. There's too much inflation. There's not enough value proposition there. This is why exclusivity over the years has been going down. This is why PlayStation started giving exclusivity away with God of War over to Steam in 2020. They've continued to do that. Now they're allowing more games over to Xbox and also planning some stuff over for the Switch too. Whatever will run. And then also Xbox has been getting rid of exclusivity as well for quite some time over to PC and Steam. And then too, they've also been doing that as well over to PlayStation. And I think it's ultimately better for all of the players. I like it. And I'm somewhat glad about the struggle with that these companies are having, because they're having to innovate. They're having to push some stuff that maybe they otherwise wouldn't. And generally speaking, that's better for the players. But one thing they are pushing is pricing. Because they're feeling the squeeze, and that's not really good for us either. So, but it will break. There is not enough money to keep it all going, and all of the shortcuts, all of the pushes of live service, all of the little teeny kind of like slop games that are really there just to get some money, not really actually create an experience. Well, this is what it was like for the Atari in the late 1970s. And the crash happened. And I think we're working toward that. Now, the crash is going to take longer because it's easier to access debt. There's a lot more companies involved. There's a lot more debt flowing around, but it does eventually stop, guys. It does eventually stop. And even if I think we get a new console generation with Xbox, with PlayStation 6, or like, let's say we got the Series 60 from NVIDIA, I don't think it would matter. People just cannot afford stuff right now, and stuff has to be pulled back. And the reason these shifts are happening with Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox, and the changing of CEOs, is because of consumer behavior. We're just not buying like we did. It's too much. That's the short end of the stick. Console cannot survive this market. Something has to change, or something has to shift, and that's why these companies are shifting. That's why these companies are firing their leadership and replacing them with somebody else. And they have to try something else in order to stay afloat. Otherwise, they are going to lose a lot of money, because when you start heading down and losing some money, well, then you start losing investors. You start losing big business deals. And it just gets worse. It just snowballs into a bigger problem. And I think that's what each console company is trying to avoid right now. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. What do you guys think? With that, folks, thanks for tuning in. There's various content every week. If I've earned it, go ahead and like, sub, all that jazz, but also share the video too. Keep the video in the algo, whichever way you would like to help. And then too, you can follow me at Twitch if you'd like. It Don't Tread on D. And yeah, this is going to be an interesting time, and it has been. So with that, folks, I'll see you guys on the next one.